It was Ottawa's hot-button topic until Stephen Harper put Parliament on hold. Now, the House is back, and so is the issue of Afghan detainees. CBC News has learned more about what may be in those detainee documents, the one the government says are too sensitive for you to see. Our senior correspondent, Terry Milewski, has more on this story. Terry?
Well, Kim, right from the start, the opposition has been claiming that government officials turned a blind eye to the torture of Afghan prisoners. But what we're learning now is the suspicion that those hidden documents may reveal much worse than that the Canadians intended some prisoners to be tortured so as to gather intelligence. If true, that would be a war crime.
This is ugly. This makes Somalia look very small.
Amir Ataran is a law professor who's been digging deep into the Afghan file and says he's seen uncensored documents suggesting the real reason for all the secrecy.
If these documents were released, what they will show is that Canada partnered deliberately with the torturers in Afghanistan for the interrogation of detainees. There would be a question of rendition, and there would be a question of war crimes on the part of certain Canadian officials. That's what's in these documents, and that's why the government is covering up as hard as it can.
Ataran says this is not about turning a blind eye. Under all that black ink on the censored documents, he says, is evidence that Canada intentionally handed prisoners to torturers.
And it wasn't accidental. It was done for a reason. It was done so that they could be interrogated using harsher methods.
The government line remains that nothing improper happened.
The Canadian forces have conducted themselves with the highest performance of all.
And yet, so much remains secret, such as the role of Canada's very secret Special Forces Unit, JTF-2. Most Canadians didn't even know they were taking Afghan prisoners until they were famously photographed doing just that. But there have been hints that JTF-2 may be handling so-called high-value prisoners.
High-value targets would be detained under a completely different mechanism that involves special forces and targeted intelligence-driven operations.
But releasing uncensored files on all this, the government says, would damage national security.
Must keep confidential.
And today, the Justice Minister asked retired Supreme Court Justice Frank Iacobucci to advise whether that claim holds water. But the opposition says Parliament is entitled to the documents, whatever Iacobucci says.
Parliament is supreme. What this is a skate around Parliament.
Who knew what and when, and who allowed the continuing saga of Afghan detainees being sent to a potential risk of torture?
Now, the government's reference to Frank Iacobucci will not answer that question. In fact, we don't even know if his advice will be public, only that it's just advice. He's not a sitting judge. He can't rule or force the government to do anything. But the stakes are getting higher with this growing sense that the secrecy is not just about national security, but about a potentially huge national embarrassment. Kim.
Thanks, Terry. Terry Milewski in Ottawa tonight.